Thank you very much. I prepared my short speech in Ukrainian, and I hope it will be understandable and translation will be good. Is it okay?
Sure.
And everybody is ready for switch on. Okay.
На то, чтобы слушать перевод. I'm going to start with corruption issues. And we are combating corruption in Ukraine. We're fighting with corruption, but corruption is problem number 2. Top problem in Ukraine is populism. And what can I say? Actually, populism and corruption interact with each other. The more populism, the more corruption we have. And even it's more related to the strong impact of the government and national bank regulation. The more the government and the state regulates, including regulations of the national bank, the more they interfere into economic processes, the more corruption we face, and economic growth declines. Actually, we don't have growth, we have decline. So that's the basic foundation. And these are the messages to our government to make sure they improve the situation. And now I'm going to talk about concrete and specific things, because we don't have people from Ministry of Finance, only 2 bullet points. What have to be done? Right now, when government is changing, and it always happens, everybody is trying to change the tax system. And that's a grave mistake. It's a big mistake. Our tax system is changing, and we are amending it 2-3 times annually. And it used to be chaotic, and it's still chaotic. We have to start. We have to limit our government expenditures. Government spending have to be limited. And in Ukraine, if we are taking into account pension fund, we are at the level of Germany. We have to be like Poland and Turkey. And what it means, the pension fund have to be, in comparison with GDP, have to be reduced by the factor of 2 times. And government spending have to be reduced by the factor of 10% from GDP. In case we'll succeed in this, this will mean that reforms have been started. Otherwise, it will be just show, pretending that we are doing some economic reforms. And because we don't have people from Ministry of Finance, I'm not going to dwell about it. Now I'm going to talk about National Bank of Ukraine, what central bank have to do. But before that, I have to assess the activities of the National Bank last year and this year. Do we see any progress in this respect? And I can tell you that we can see some improvement. And I'm hopeful about it. And now, pretty straightforward analysis. The functions of the basic functions of the banking system. And I'll assess, just actually evaluate. 0 means very bad assessment, very bad situation, and 5, very good. How it was done last year and this year. And basic functions of the monetary payments within the banking system. How quickly it is done, how reliable it is, and how expensive are the services. This is very important to investors, external and internal.
It is both about payments in foreign currency and domestic currency. Prior to the crisis, our payment system had rank 5, top score. Right now, last year I would put 2 points only, which is very poor. And I just want to make an example for you. For the small business to make foreign currency payments, sometimes it takes from 5 to 10 working days. As for the costs, I'm only taking the Exim Bank, the state-owned bank. If anybody wants from small and medium business to make a transaction or wire transfer the money from a deposit account to another bank, you need to pay 5% off your total payment value. Just for you to realize how the banking system works currently. So I would put 2 points for the last year and 3 points for now, which is satisfactory. There is some progress, but is still not sufficient enough. And I'd like to say that the 3 points that I'm giving right now is actually not allowing the economy to function for the growth. It is actually not satisfactory for both the business and the entire economy. As for the deposits, the progress in the deposits, their reliability, the positive interest rates, the deposit rates should be more than the inflation rate, and the liquidity. You can withdraw your deposits or place your deposits. Last year, unfortunately, I would put 0, so the lowest ranking possible. The deposits deteriorated both in the domestic and in the foreign currency. It was a catastrophic drop of deposits last year at around 18 to 20%, plus or minus, as it's hard to estimate. This year, the situation is a little bit better. I would put 2 points for this year, and this is already better. So the function of retaining and accumulating resources for the business is doing much better, and it's one of the merits of the central bank, and it is not sufficient still for the economic growth. As for the loans, the lending dynamics and the rates, again, from 0 last year and 1, I would put 1 for this year now. Why? Loans have been already in crisis. In case given I spoke about deposits and the correlation with the inflation rates, then in absolute figures, lending is also deteriorating at around 18 to 20% last year. I just want to add, just for your understanding, Mr. Fisher said it very right. If foreign direct investment drops, as well as lending, then of course the economy and GDP may not grow and will not grow because we program the economy to deteriorate. So this year the economic growth progress at around 1 to 2% is obviously possible. At least if lending grows by 2 or 3%, the question is whether foreign direct investment comes in or not. So hopefully it is a yes. The amounts will be not very significant, but still there will be some. As for the foreign exchange, unfortunately, this function is very important for the Ukrainian banking system. Nowhere else in the entire world anybody would take as much care of the exchange rate as we do. But this is a cult in this country, which is one of the key functions of the banking system, obviously. This is the bank's margin, how much banks want for the exchange, arbitration opportunities when you can buy foreign currency and then sell it and make money on it. Arbitration is always an opportunity to have several different exchange rates, and also the gray market in the foreign exchange. Foreign currency exchange. This function I would evaluate last year at 1 point in terms of the banking system's performance, and I would put 2 points for this year. Why? Because there is an arbitration opportunity. There are several exchange rates available. The bank's margin in some of the transactions, especially cash transactions, sometimes is reaching 2 or 3% sometimes. This is inappropriate for the sober banking system. That's why I would give an advice to the central bank to take the key functions that any banking system has to do and keep eyes open and at least get to 3 or 4 points across all the parameters. This will give an opportunity for the business and investors to work much better, because right now they're not really willing to do this. Now very shortly about my own assessment of the national bank's performance in terms of the monetary policy tools. And this is a big progress here. I made my own study and I came to the conclusion that the central bank is really apt to get involved in very active monetary and exchange policy. It is capable of refinancing, it is capable of the interest rates. It can also work with the reserves and deposits. However, it is not taking advantage of all the available tools. And this is another advice to the National Bank to get much more involved in using monetary tools in its arsenal. Not to revisit the exchange rate or interest rates once per 6 months or once per a year, given our inflation-related fluctuations. It has to be done monthly, of course, with the forecasting involved. But last but not least, and probably one of the most important thing, is the responsibility of the National Bank. And here I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. In the modern world, the situation depends much more on the National Bank than on the government, luckily or unluckily. But I would still recommend to revisit the key or the core central bank's function, like they do in the United States. The central bank needs to pursue economic growth and new jobs by means of encouraging price and financial stability. It means the banks do not go bankrupt and the inflation is kept under control. Only then one can assess the central bank's performance as constructive. Then I think we would never see such things as ban for the investors to reinvest their profits and also to actually repatriate them, their dividends and profits. And maybe the last point at this, actually this is another advice I would like to make to the National Bank of Ukraine. Stop trying to assess the banking control effectiveness by the number of banks that go bankrupt. Because with the bank's bankruptcy, the GDP is dropping down, inflation grows, and there are so many risks for devaluation. Because all the problems are actually covered by means of permissible emission through GDP monetization. The less bankrupt banks we have, the faster economic growth we will have. We need to get rid of this monetary narrowing policy and move to monetary expansion, which means we need to streamline our work towards economic growth, but not to actually make conservation of problems we have. And here I would like to stop at this point. Thank you.